Welcome to the FARcast here at Chadron State College. I'm Daniel Binkard with my co-host, Alex Helmbrecht, and we're here with the fantastic Erin Norman, Associate Professor in Family and Consumer Sciences, and we're so glad you're joining us today.
Thank you. I'm glad you guys asked me.
Absolutely. Well, we always like talking to the FCS people. We've had Josh Ellis on before. We're trying to get Lori Hunt, so Lori, if you're watching, we're going to ask you soon.
You're next.
And we hope you don't say no. So, Erin, we got a few questions for you, as always. We want to know, first of all, tell us a little bit about your upbringing. Where'd you grow up, and how did you end up coming to Chadron State College?
I am from a tiny little town in southeast Nebraska called Ong, and I graduated from Sandy Creek High School, and I went to Nebraska Wesleyan one year, and it just really wasn't a good fit for me. So I transferred out to Chadron State thanks to my great uncle Gary Musgrave, who used to be employed here. And he asked if I'd ever heard of it. I said no. And so then I came out for a visit, and I was like, wow, this is my crowd. This is my kind of people. This is my kind of community. I think this is somewhere where I could be very successful. And so I applied. I got accepted. I came out here, and it was all kind of downhill from there. I met my husband here, and that's why I still live here. So it was a really great experience. It was kind of weird coming back and then being a professor here, but it was still all good. I really like it.
So who was the best professor that you had as a student?
Oh.
Do we dare ask? Well, let's put it this way.
He hasn't been gone that long.
He's
Who
not
stood
even
out?
here anymore. His name was Mr. Fillmore.
Oh,
He taught like the general biology and anatomy, physiology courses that I took in the sciences. And I was not RHOP, but I was a human biology major for a very long time before I found nutrition and then Dr. Sutliff. So those between Fillmore and Sutliff, they would probably be up there in my top two.
that's great. We know that, all the professors here are good people, but, we like to know this person's a stand-up, that person's a stand-up.
He was pretty fantastic. Like I said, anatomy and physiology is not the most exciting class, and he could somehow make it really interesting. So that's a huge plus. I said, it's kind of some dry material, and he really made it a lot more interesting for sure. So
That's great.
So you mentioned that you were from Ong, Nebraska, actually before we started recording, and I had never heard of it, and I was actually near there this weekend, and I didn't see a sign for it. So I'm assuming it's a small town.
Is it incorporated? Or?
It is not incorporated anymore.
Okay,
it was
okay.
when I first moved there. Like I said, it's like 50 people now. And
So how many was in your graduating class?
so I went to Sandy Creek, so that's 5 towns combined now. And then I opted in since Ong is not part of those 5 towns. And I actually had a big class. I think it was like 39 or something like that.
Wow.
So I'm sure other people that are from bigger schools are like 39. Oh my gosh, that's small. But
How big was yours?
Mine was, Ponca is 1,000 people, and mine was about 42.
oh my.
For the K through 12 schools, like 300, 350 or something like that.
Oh, wow.
Back then. So, yeah, I'm with you.
Yeah.
So I graduated from McCook High School.
Oh.
And sorry. And it was like 180 something.
Oh yeah.
It was huge.
My cousins graduated from McCook. So yeah.
Go Bison.
And was that like a normal size graduating class?
I think it was on the big size.
Okay.
I don't know. I wasn't in the top 10 academically, so I mean, it's probably not a shocker to anyone who knows me, but it was a big class. I was definitely in the top half.
Oh, yeah. There you go.
Yeah, mine was kind of a big class, though, for Sandy Creek at the time. I think they're all about that size now, but I don't know, maybe they were downhill trending from there for a while.
Well, yeah. So I'm sure you probably felt right at home when you came to CSC. Similar size. Not obviously there's more than 40 students here, but the class sizes are small. You get to know your professors. So a lot of probably a lot of similarities to what you experienced.
And the small town community too, because I mean, to go from a town of 50 people, or even from there, before I lived in Ong, I lived in Edgar, which was like 550. So I mean, small towns, and then to go to Lincoln, it was just like way too much, and I had to get out of there.
I don't blame you. I do not blame you. So your bachelor's degree is from CSC, like we mentioned. Did you ever think you'd wind up teaching here while you were a student?
I had no idea. Like I said, I was a human biology major initially. Thought I wanted to be a nurse. Then found out I don't like blood and it makes me pass out. So I just I should change majors. So then I took a nutrition class with Dr. Sutliff, and then I kind of got hooked on that. So I switched and got really lucky, actually, because then after I graduated, I realized that there's really not a lot you can do with a nutrition major in the state of Nebraska. It's just for licensure and insurance reasons and stuff. So your options as far as getting a job are a little bit limited. So I decided to pursue dietetics, and that's everybody I'd talked to. They're like, if you really want a job in nutrition in the state, you need to get a license. And I'm like, okay. So I looked into it, and it had all of these science requirements. And I was like, oh my gosh, I got so lucky because I only had medical terminology to finish.
Nice.
Oh,
Otherwise, I would have been having to go back for like a second bachelor's degree. So I got really, really lucky there, and I really do believe that this is where I'm supposed to be because of a lot of the luck and the way things just kind of fell together. And so I went to Eastern Michigan University, and by then I'd already met my husband, and we'd gotten married. I already had one kid, and you can't really pick up a ranch and move it, so moving was not an option. And like I said, I wanted to have a job that I enjoyed, and so, yeah, I applied to Eastern Michigan University master's degree in dietetics, and at the time, they were one of the few programs that did an online program. There just weren't very many, and they only accepted 50 students. And I remember somebody telling me once, they're like, oh, well, just don't be surprised when you don't get in. And I was like, oh, thanks for the badge of encouragement there. That was really nice of you. But I got in, so I was like, well, and that was crazy. It's a very intense 2-year program, which for me got drug out because I had another kid in between there. I have 5 kids, by the way. And so, yeah, that got really kind of drug out. And so it was 3 years, and I got my license. And I think I was a month away from actually graduating when Yvonne Moody called me, because I had put something on Facebook about, I am never doing homework again. I'm never taking another class again. I am, like few weeks away from getting my dietetics license, master's degree, and all that stuff. And she was on the phone. She was like, have you ever thought about teaching? She's like, we need somebody over here. And I'm like, yeah, that sounds great. And then I get all, apply. And I think I adjuncted once for a semester. And then I applied in the spring and got hired on. And they're like, oh, by the way, you need to start your PhD. And I'm like, oh, man, more classes. But it all worked out. I know. I think it was like somebody like laughing at me because I'm never taking another class again. 7 years later, lots of courses, and finally finished my PhD. So
that's great. Congratulations.
Yeah, thank you.
So you've been here 7 years.
Yep.
Time flies.
It does fly.
It seems like it was only like 2 or 3 years ago that I took your photo in old admin on that new faculty orientation.
Yeah. That bad picture.
You look great in that photo.
Yeah, Daniel doesn't take bad pictures. Now I might have a dumb question, but what's the difference between nutrition and dietetics?
Oh, I think they are just so interchangeably used.
Okay.
So dietetics is anybody can understand or I guess give advice for nutrition. You're not supposed to. It's actually illegal in the state of Nebraska and a lot of your other surrounding states.
For me to give Daniel nutritional advice? Yeah. Quit eating all that gluten.
Never. I'm going to eat all the gluten.
I think where dietetics is more, it's associated with that licensure, really. And so it's overseen by the Academy of Nutrition and Dietetics, and the ASIND is their accreditation body. And it's just kind of, it's more in depth. Like, what would you do for somebody who had a heart attack and then they, had all these other complications? And so where somebody who's like more certified in nutrition, they're kind of more dealing with just like your typical losing some weight, maybe reducing some high blood pressure, that kind of stuff. Whereas dietetics, I mean, you're like really in there, like what do you do and how much fat, carbohydrate, and protein are you going to give somebody who's on like a TPN, which is the IV, and they, are unconscious and they're only eating through their IV. What would you do for them and how much would you give them and stuff like that. So it's really intense. And that's where I think a lot of people get confused about it when they say, oh, I want to go into nutrition and become a registered dietitian. And then they realize that they are basically getting a pre-med degree with an emphasis in nutrition. I've lost many students who keep on telling me, they're like, oh, I want to be a dietitian. And so I send them over to the sciences and they're like, this isn't what I thought it was. And I'm like, but that's what it is. So, nice. And I always tell students too, I'm like, when you're in the ICU and you're doing your rounds with the group of you have the psychology, you have occupational therapy, the doctor, the nurses, pharmacy's there, you're there. And they're all talking their doctor lingo, and they're telling what happened overnight or what's been happening last week. Like, you got to be able to step in and talk their language and really go make some good suggestions for the benefit of that patient. So
wow.
It can be really intense.
I'm glad there's people like that and who can do that, because I know it's certainly not one of my skills. So kudos to you.
Yeah, it's a lot. That's and I just think there's a little bit of miscommunication as far as what the expectations are between the two different areas. So yeah.
And I'm sure it's always maybe interesting dinner table conversations with your husband, with the ranch, with don't eat red meat, stuff like that. So I'm sure you probably are always a fun dinner guest.
Yeah, well, I think a lot of people actually avoid me because they really don't want to hear what I have to say because they're like afraid of what I might say. Or my favorite is like where I'll see somebody at Walmart and they're like don't look at my cart.
Oh yeah.
And I'm like, I promise you, I will not judge because we're all human and sometimes you just got to get by. And, when I was in grad school, I had 3 kids at the time. And even now with my dissertation and my PhD, I'm not going to lie, there were sometimes Kraft macaroni and cheese in my cupboard because I was trying to get my big paper done, or whatever. Mm-hmm. And you just got to survive sometimes. So I get it.
That's a staple.
I get it. Yeah. So, I don't eat like that all the time. And I try not to let my kids eat like that very often either. But sometimes you got to do what you got to do. So
you're the mom that brings celery and carrots rather than, than brownies and cake.
I do a lot of cheese sticks and stuff like that too.
Okay, all right.
But well, sometimes.
My mom always used to bring like oranges to birthday parties. I was like, what are you doing?
It's a little messy.
Bring some fruit snacks.
I know my kids are like, I want a Lunchable for lunch. I'm like, no, they're so overpriced. I could cut you up some salami and cheese and save myself like $5 at least.
It's just they want the Oreos or the cookies in it.
Or the cool package. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, that's not even going to fill you up. My kids eat all the time. And I was just like, if I sent that as your school lunch, you would need like 4 of them to fill you up. So no. Yeah.
Well, Erin, let's talk about, I kind of want to continue the question or the idea of where your passion for all this food stuff came from and how that developed. And then also for somebody who might be interested in it, what are the classes like if you're going down this road?
Yeah. I guess I would say I've kind of always been interested in it, but never thought that was where I would go, I guess. I remember growing up in especially the 90s, the late, I don't remember much of the 80s, but I was alive then. But there was so much diet stuff out there. And I remember my mom and her mom and her friends, they would go on these diets and they would just go on one and then they'd stop. And then these foods, I remember Fresca was this really big pop type of drink back then too. And
the artificial sweeteners.
Yes.
Yeah.
I just remember all this stuff. And I remember the struggles, that my mom and her friends would have sometimes. And I just gosh, that's just so strange, And I don't think I ever really actually thought about it, but subconsciously, I think I paid attention to it. And health, I've kind of always known that I wanted to do something kind of in the health or medical industry. And then, like I said, I don't like blood, apparently. I found out through a bad, was job shadowing experience. I found out that I really don't like blood.
Was there a specific volume that was the tipping point?
It was a lot in a ER situation. I'm pretty sure I wasn't supposed to be there, but just happened to walk by at the wrong time, and I was like,
I suppose that's a good thing that in the end,
those things you can't unsee.
Yes, once you've seen it, you can't unsee it. And so I was like, well, I definitely don't want to be a nurse then, because that's something you'd have to be exposed to a lot. Mm-hmm. I just, once I finally started taking a couple of nutrition classes, I really got interested in it, and then it just kind of spurred from there. And, I even remember struggling a lot with my own weight and health. I mean, I was never, I guess, I don't classify unhealthy. I guess I didn't have any like issues as a result of it, but I do remember struggling with my own weight and stuff. And I think then once I finally felt confident to think for myself, and the dietary guidelines are pushed on us a lot, and then the textbooks kind of all say the same thing, and I really found the individualism of it. Not the same thing's not going to work for everybody. And I think once I figured that part out, then nutrition really became even more interesting to me, and the many facets of it. And then dietetics was just a way to get my information and my knowledge and experience and passion for it out there to other people, I guess. So
Great.
Yeah, in a roundabout way, if that was answered your question. But the classes, I think they're really hard but interesting at the same time. It makes you think about food in a whole nother level.
What do the students say about them? If we could catch them in an unguarded moment and say, what do you really think about these classes?
I think they would say that they feel like they've had the wool pulled over their eyes for a very long time, and they're just starting to really see things for how they are versus how they thought they were. I've had students before that, like I go in my nutrition class, and we're getting more nutrition classes when we get our program accredited. Yeah. But right now I just teach one nutrition class, and the students are always just really shocked about, how much more goes into our food, the politics behind it, the money behind it, how things are labeled, how they can be labeled one way when it might actually be kind of fudging things a little bit there. And then just the details of it, like how does your body actually process that? Like I go into it pretty deep. And students are always like, oh my gosh, I had no idea. Yeah. So it makes them think of food a lot differently than what they had previously.
So they're shocked to know they can't drink 4 bangs before their 9 o'clock class. And then
Wait, you're saying I shouldn't do that?
So one of the big ones that I am really learning more and more about, though, is the fat. Like that's one that, for so many decades now, we've been told, like, don't eat fat, don't eat fat. It's so bad for you. And I actually even remember in a class I was taking in my master's degree program where we were talking about vegetable oil, which is, if you didn't know, a polyunsaturated omega-6. And they're really bad for you. But then we go to another class where where we're learning like nutrition, education, counseling, and things like that. And we're telling people to eat more of it. So then that way they can avoid eating butter, which at the time was still deemed a pretty horrible thing, saturated fat, bad, bad, bad. And I'm just like, but you're telling them to eat this other thing that's bad. Like it just didn't make sense. It didn't weigh up. And I was just like, what? And I said something and you could tell like the claws came out, the feathers got ruffled, and this was going to go down a road that I don't like to debate either. So I was just like, I could see this going down a road that was going to make me very uncomfortable and could maybe, hurt some feelings and things. And so I just dropped it. But yeah, that was all. She was just like, because that's what we do. That's what the recommendation is. And I was like, yeah, but why? Like, why are we recommending this when it's just as bad as saturated fat? Like, it doesn't make any sense.
Yeah. I remember hearing something about like, the cheese production has like increased. I don't know. I'm going to get the percentage wrong, but like 150% or something from like when we were kids, we didn't eat cheese. We'd have like Kraft singles or whatever, but that was it. Now there's just like aisles and aisles of cheese.
And it all goes back to because everything you want or need, it has to be in this low-fat version. For a long time, I remember I don't even think you could find Yoplait yogurt that had fat in it for like a decade. And so it's just crazy. And then the other thing I tell students, I'm like, you got to really pay attention to stuff too, because if you ever see anything at the grocery store that says low fat, it probably has more sugar and more salt than the regular version. And so I'm like, you got to be really careful about that stuff. Just because it says low fat doesn't mean it's actually healthier.
Yeah.
And then the other thing too is I think nutrition as a science is about to make, I don't want to say it like an about face, but kind of a pretty big change as far as our recommendations, because the science on what we used to recommend is, I feel like kind of starting to crumble a little bit. So
interesting.
Yeah, so there's a lot behind it, and it is really interesting, and I'm curious to see how it goes.
Yeah. If you're interested about eating bad foods, you need to watch this YouTube chef, Maddie Matheson. Just like makes these things that they look so fantastic to eat, but it's just full of like bacon and butter and all these other things. It looks really good though.
So I think butter and bacon's actually good for you.
Oh, good. So that's a staple of my diet. But
I eat a lot of butter. I actually eat so this is going back to like in college, and I said, I mean, I wasn't like super heavy, but I really struggled trying to keep a normal weight, as a self-conscious girl coming into a community that in a college, I wanted to, sport it for the guys kind of deal and stuff and make a good impression. And I did. I've always kind of really struggled, and I've fluctuated. I think I gained like the freshman 30. Part of that obviously was at Wesleyan, and then coming here and stuff. So I mean,
blame Wesleyan. That doesn't happen at Chadron State.
Yeah, but like I remember thinking, gosh, this is not working. I did everything that they say in the dietary guidelines, like low fat and lots of fruits and vegetables and stuff like that. And I finally just said, I'm done, and I just kind of threw in the towel. And I went back to eating the foods that I actually really like. Like I'm the type of person, if I have a steak, I try to eat. Like I try to get the most fattiest looking one that I can. And then I eat the fat first. Like that's my favorite part. Like the crunchy, crispy part on the steak. Like that's actually my favorite part of the steak. And I went back to doing that. And it really actually changed my life. Like I really, when you're consciously dieting, you're just hungry all the time and you're just miserable, and that's all you can think about. And when I started going back to drinking whole milk and eating more fat and not caring that, butter at the time was so bad for you. I'm doing my air quotes here if you can't see that. But when I went back to like cooking like my grandma always used to do and stuff, and eating like my grandma used to do, like all my problems went away and I didn't have to think about it anymore. And so that's kind of the background that I came from that makes me question a lot of the things that we recommend and why do we recommend it. And I'm not saying it's wrong, but I'm not saying it's right either, because I'm still trying to figure it out too in my own. There's so much new research coming out about all that stuff. It makes it confusing. So I get why the general public is just like, this is ridiculous.
Well, yeah, it's always evolving.
Yeah. Oh, it is, and it's hard to keep up with. And there's so many diets and so many food products, and it's just it's a lot.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
So is it safe to use cooking spray?
I do.
Okay. Sounds good. So kind of you alluded to the nutrition and dietetics accreditation that's going on, but you're the program director for the nutrition and dietetics program that CSC has with one of our sister colleges, Wayne State. Tell us a little bit more about that, kind of a unique program between the two colleges.
Yeah. So previously, to be a registered dietitian, you could have a bachelor's degree or a master's degree as long as from an accredited institution. And in 2024, that's all going to change, and you will no longer be able to get a registered dietitian license without a master's degree. Or did I say that right? You have to have a master's degree to become a registered dietitian. And so with that, there was this time when we were thinking about going to what was called a future bachelor's degree. And basically it was a way to get registered dietitian technicians. So it's like a step down from a registered dietitian. So we were looking at that avenue, and then the accreditation body decided not to have those, and kind of did away with it. And so we are going for a DPD program, which is a didactic program in dietetics. And basically it's kind of like a first step, so students can go on to a future graduate program at the master's level to then become a registered dietitian.
So like the cohort, it would exist of students both in Chadron and in Wayne?
Yeah.
And so like, will you teach Wayne students? And
Yeah,
will Wayne professors teach?
We're still working on all the little details and that kind of stuff on how our partnership is actually going to work out. But we are anticipating like the students would take their required science courses, because you're still going to have to take like the anatomy, the physiology, all the way up through biochems, all that kind of stuff. And then I think we will share the nutrition classes like medical nutrition therapy 1 and 2. Those will be shared, and like nutrition across the life cycle, nutrition, education, and counseling. Some of those bigger classes that have to be taught by a registered dietitian will be shared between the 2 campuses.
And this kicks off next fall?
Yeah.
Hopefully?
We have our accreditation site visit coming up here in November. And then we would be able to start accepting our first students in the fall 2022.
That's exciting.
It is. It is exciting.
Great.
Yeah. So I'm really looking forward to it. I think it'll allow us to really step up our game and nutrition and what we're teaching here on campus and go in deeper like I've always kind of really wanted to. But yeah.
Well, that's awesome. And I think, just with the way things are in this community and in our region, I would think a lot of opportunities for those students to take those skills and maybe intern or I don't know what exactly the program looks like, but certainly give back in some way. Yeah,
they won't have to do internships or anything at this point because all of that stuff has to be supervised under a registered dietitian, and that will be done at the master's level.
Okay.
So we're just in charge of making sure that they get the coursework. However, we're going to try to make it as hands-on, community involvement if we can and when we can, and very, active-based competency type of learning. So that way our students really understand what they're doing instead of just, there's a difference between reading it and knowing it versus doing it and knowing it.
Yeah.
And we want to make sure that our students can do it and know it too. So,
great.
Yeah.
So I understand you recently received your PhD.
Yes, I did. That was hard.
You got through it, survived.
I did survive.
Tell us a little bit about, what was the process like, and what's your dissertation?
I went to Walden University, and mine is in public health with a community health track, and it took me, about 6.5 years. And it would have probably taken me a little less, except I had 2 more kids during that process. So I think I've already said it is a recurring theme here. I always wanted a big family. I just didn't want to do it at the same time I was working on a dissertation. But anyway,
a bit of a balancing act, isn't it?
But it was actually, I would say, besides the stress of it all, it was a really good experience.
That's
I think,
good.
Even though I love dietetics, I love nutrition, but we're taught so much about everything. As diet and exercise, diet and exercise, diet and exercise, and you're just like, well, there's so many other things that play into why we have an unhealthy population and why we have mental health and how mental health can affect it, or how, people's economic status or where they're living. Like we live in rural, Nebraska. And so how can that play into a person's health? And I think it just really opens your eyes to just health in general.
Sure.
And I think it's made me even a better dietitian. Because now I try to think about more of the outside things that could be impacting their overall health from a nutrition standpoint. And not that I'm qualified to, discuss that, but at least I have an understanding of where they're coming from so I can help them work with that and play into that and hopefully improve their health. So, but yeah, it was a lot of coursework. And my dissertation was trying to determine what are the determinants of fruit and vegetable consumption in the panhandle of Nebraska. Turns out healthy eating self-efficacy is the big one. So cost may have been a factor, but it wasn't in my study.
Okay.
That's usually what people say. Eating healthy is too expensive. But it didn't turn up to be positive or a significant factor or determinant, at least for the Panhandle region of Nebraska, which is really surprising.
Yeah.
I was really expecting it to be like the number one thing. I think my other variables were cooking skills, whether or not they felt like they could prepare it. Let's see, social support, whether I think I mainly talked about family support, not really friends. Access, quality, and cost of the fruits and vegetables. And healthy eating self-efficacy. So do you feel like you can do it? If you believe it, you can do it, apparently.
And so you surveyed Panhandle residents?
I did all of the counties that classify as the Panhandle. I think there was, I can't remember, I want to say it was Banner County, but now I can't remember. It wasn't even that long ago. Now I can't remember. There was one county that I didn't have any responses from. I will say most of my sample did come from Dawes County or Sheridan County or Box Butte and then Scottsbluff. Those were my big counties.
Yeah.
But I think I had like 144 people respond to my survey. So that was.
And so what did your study find?
Basically that, those other factors have been determinants or significant determinants in other studies, but just basically here in the Panhandle, the big reason why people don't eat fruits and vegetables is because they don't believe they have the power to do it. So it's more of like a mind over matter kind of a situation. So like I said, if you really truly believe that you should be doing it and that you can do it, you probably will do it. And if you kind of have all these excuses, I guess, for lack of a better way,
I definitely understand that.
Then you won't.
The mental block of, I could fix something up, or I could throw the pizza in the oven and call it good.
Yeah.
Because it sure
Just
is
put
easy
some
to
veggies
be.
on top of that.
There you go. Now we found the happy medium.
Yeah. So it was really interesting. Like I said, I always hear that it's just too expensive. It's too expensive. And then it was surprising that was not the big reason.
Well, yeah.
It wasn't significant anyway.
There goes my next question. I was going to say a lot of people think it's expensive to eat healthy.
Yeah. I think it's a lot of mind over matter type of deal, and
so you have to want to eat that apple.
I think you have to really make yourself believe you really want to do it or should do it before you'll probably end up doing it.
So I can speak from experience. My wife and I did this thing where we didn't really, other than probably my multivitamin, didn't have sugar for a month. Mm-hmm. And ate an apple that first day, and it tasted amazing.
Yeah.
And so I think sometimes maybe we're oversaturated with these fake sugars. I don't know if they're fake, but
I would say all sugars in general.
Yeah. And so it's like the things don't taste very good. Mm-hmm. And I have found, as I've gotten older, I like to eat things that I hated as a kid, like Brussels sprouts and sauerkraut, things like that.
I think that's just maturity of taste, though, and
yeah, I think you're probably
willingness
right.
to open up and try new things. Yeah. I was the same way, though. I used to hate onions with a passion. Didn't matter if they were like diced or big pieces or sauteed. I hated all of them. Mm-hmm. And now I'm like, oh, well, I think it's more of a texture deal. So I've kind of found out like I actually do like onions as long as they're cooked the right way or something like that. So I don't know.
I suppose even though we do technically live in like a food desert, the access to fresh fruit and vegetables is not bad.
Yeah, we're not hurting.
We're not. No, and that's the crazy thing. So I was originally going to do my dissertation about food deserts and talking about food deserts because we technically kind of live in one. And then because your whole dissertation process is a very long time. So like when I started thinking about topics, this was like 2 years ago. And there's been a lot of research in the last 5 years on food deserts because it was such a big thing for a long time. And then as I got closer to doing my dissertation, there were like more and more articles coming out saying it's not a big deal and it's not an influencer. And I'm like,
dang
and so I remember talking to a lady when we were supposed to be narrowing down our topics, and she was like, but haven't they proven that that's not even a factor anymore, really? And I'm like, you read them too, didn't you? So I was like, oh, okay, so we can't do that. And I was throw all that paperwork away and start over. So yeah, that was a frustrating part of my PhD for sure. So
yeah, that would be a bummer.
Yeah.
On it goes. Well, we've got this question about. I'm going to dive down this rabbit hole, Erin. I apologize if it, and we'll probably have some repeat. Anyway, so you are a registered dietitian and licensed medical nutrition therapist. Mm-hmm. So what's the distinction between those? How do you incorporate them into the classroom setting?
They're pretty much the same thing.
Oh,
so the deal is that to practice in Nebraska, you have to be a registered dietitian, but they also require that you go through the Nebraska Health and Human Services Department and get your medical nutrition therapy license in order to practice. And so it's kind of like, teachers have to have their is it an endorsement to teach in a specific state? So you have to be like registered to practice or to teach in that state. Yeah. It's kind of the same thing, except you have to have this LMNT in order to practice in Nebraska. And basically all you have to do is prove that you're an RD, and they'll give you the LMNT license.
How do you prove it? You have to eat like a cup of lentils or something?
No, you just send them your license card. I have a little card, and
I'm
they
joking.
send it to them, and they're like, okay. So, yeah, and then you pay a fee every year to maintain it.
I feel like I should get a bonus point for knowing lentils is a superfood.
There we go. Always good.
Well, since I can't ask my expensive, healthy question,
I'm glad we covered that one.
Erin, what are some of your interests or hobbies outside of work? You mentioned that you live and kind of own a ranch or co-own a ranch.
My husband has been ranching for, well, he grew up ranching. And his family, if I recall, has been like in the ranching business for like, it goes way back, like 135 years or something like that.
Okay, wow.
So kind of north of Crawford area. And I like to help when I can. I didn't grow up with cattle, so I grew up in like a farming agricultural community. But I didn't grow up with cows. That's like a whole different deal.
So you have the garden, and your husband tends to the cattle.
Yeah,
right?
I try to help.
Okay,
I do like riding horses. So next week we trail home from government. We have a pasture that's clear up north, and it's like a 10-mile trail. And we just ride our horses, and some people use 4-wheelers. But my husband and I and the kids, we like to ride, and we walk them 10 miles back home, and we, trail them up there every spring and trail them back every fall. And that's kind of one of my favorites. And then branding is a good time. Because I like to do the food. So I like to put on this big buffet of food for all the help that come out every time. And that's my contribution. I do help with calving, although I will say I'm a little skittish. So anytime one looks at me wrong, like she's gonna turn and come after me, I'm like on the fence in no time at all. So I'm not the most helpful there, but I do try every once in a while because I know my husband gets really tired, and he checks. Last spring was horrible. We had that, was it like a week and a half of below zero temperatures. And oh my gosh, he was just checking around the clock all night, all day, and he was exhausted. And after 10 days, I was like, oh, I'll do a night check for you. But I remember the whole time I had the spotlight, and I'm like, okay, is there a mountain lion up in those trees? Yeah. Is she going to come over here and kill me? Am I going to step in this big hole and face plant it? Like, I was like, the spotlight was just like all over the place because I was I was psyching myself out essentially, but well, I try to do it every once in a while because I know it's a lot of very manual labor, and I try to help him.
Certainly, the ranchers, the ones I know, and I'm assuming all of them. Otherwise, you're not a successful rancher. Right. Work so hard.
Oh, they do, and that's the other bit that's becoming a really big passion of mine is like ranchers really love their animals. You hear these things about like factory farms and all this stuff, and I'm just like, that is not how it is. And it's just sad to see ranchers, kind of getting, a slap on the hand for things that they're not even doing in the first place. Mm-hmm. And I actually just had that conversation with some students, and he was just genuinely curious, and so was she. And she was talking about, the humane treatment of animals and stuff. And I'm like, we do everything we can to help our cows or calves or both, And I said, last year we had a deal where we gave them a shot, and it reacted with another shot that we had given them, and it made their joints really stiff. I didn't know this even happened, but apparently it does. And so we had 14 cows the next day who their joints were so stiff they couldn't get up. Oh, yeah. And I was like, oh my gosh. And of course, my husband was not in the best frame of mind. He was a little upset about it, and I don't blame him. I mean, that's our livelihood. And so we went out with an IV, and we IV'd them all that day. And that takes a long time. Yeah. And that was my job. And then every day for like a week, we'd go out and we'd give them water, we'd give them food. And then we had this hip thing that we'd lock on their hips and lift them up with the loader of the tractor. Because if they lay down for too long, they lose circulation in their feet, and then they really can't get up. And so we would do that, and we'd prop them up, and each one for like a half an hour every day, we'd go out and we'd prop her up and try to help her get up underneath her and get her walking again, and give her more water and more food, even though the one, if she could have gotten up, she would have killed me. But luckily she couldn't get up because, she was mad.
But they're all good now?
Yeah, and they're all fine.
Oh, well, that's great.
Yeah, they all lived, and they all walk now, and so we were very lucky.
Yeah.
So, but I mean, we love our animals. We treat our animals with we want them to be well and happy, and
sure.
And all that stuff too. So that's kind of another big passion of mine, is kind of setting the record straight, kind of telling the other side of the story, because that's the side of the story that you don't hear very much in the media.
That's good to know.
Yeah.
Now I'm curious to know what's your branding spread, because I've been to a couple brandings, and usually it's like sloppy joes and a bag of chips. Or something.
Go way above and beyond that.
Okay, all right.
So food is my deal, and that's like sometimes my healthy food and my love for baking and cooking really just like collide and don't really mesh well. But so for my branding, I like to smoke things now. I'm like really into smoking and slow roasting and stuff. And so I like to do a lot of roast, and then I'll smoke it and do like a really good coarse pepper rub and salt and a few other seasonings, garlic especially. And I'll like smoke it for, usually like 6 to 8 hours or something like that. And then I slice it and put it in a roaster. And so that's my main dish.
Wow.
And then I always have, I always have like mashed potatoes or something, some kind of potato or cheesy potatoes or something. Because, you got to meet people where they are. They're hungry. They're not going to eat a salad, which actually I hate salad. So that's telling all my closets here.
I like a salad if someone else makes it for me.
Oh, yeah.
That's the best.
I'll eat it if someone makes it for me. But for me to make my own salad, it's not going to happen. Yeah. So we'll have like a buffet of desserts, because I love sweets and I love dessert. And so I have my special desserts that I've found go over very well. And then I'll do some kind of like green beans, something with green beans, or I make like a 6-bean type of, what do I want to say? Like a ham and beans type of deal, or.
Oh, sure. I know what you're talking about.
Yeah. But I use hamburger. Yeah, it's like, I think they're called cowboy beans. But anyway, something like that. And then a few other types of salads, like a fruit salad or something like that. But I don't get crazy with.
Do you have like homemade rolls or anything?
They don't go over very well. I love making bread, but it's like hit or miss. Sometimes I do. Yeah. Sometimes I like to make like the butter horns or crescent rolls, make my own, because I'm a big thing. My big deal is making things from scratch. Like I love making things from scratch. But yeah, the last couple of years, I'm pretty sure my kids and I had to polish them off because they didn't go over very well. So
well, that's good. I mean, you've got 5 of them. They got to eat too. So.
Yeah, they love to eat. They're big kids, so we will be going through a lot of food. I'm sure our grocery bill is going to be ridiculous in the next couple of years. So.
Oh wow, yeah, I wasn't even thinking about that. Buy like 4 gallons of milk at a time.
Yeah.
Well, I think we've come to our quick-hitting questions. This is the really hard questions, by the way. So just quick answers. What is a favorite movie of yours? And is it something that influenced by the kids, or is it something you actually want to watch?
I actually I don't watch a lot of TV because I don't have a lot of time for it, and I really like to do other things. But if I had to pick a favorite, it'd probably be Steel Magnolias.
Oh, that's a good. Yeah. Did you see the play they did a few years ago here?
I did not.
Oh
my gosh, how did I miss? Well, I was probably working on my dissertation, so that's why I missed
right in the middle of that.
It's a real tearjerker.
It is.
Oh yeah, I love that movie. So yeah, that would probably be my favorite.
What's a favorite food experience of yours?
Food experience? Oh my gosh, like a restaurant?
Food. Yeah, a restaurant or whatever.
Or something that came out really successful for the branding buffet.
An apple pie you made that was great.
I don't know. I've made a lot of things. I was really impressed the first time I ever made beef bourgeois. Have you ever had that before? It's Italian. I love Italian food. So, but it's Italian. Like you take like a sirloin steak and you like make a mash of. It's usually like breadcrumbs and garlic and some kind of cheese or something, and then you flatten the steak out and you layer it on there, and then you roll it up, and then you have to tie it, otherwise it'll fall apart, and then you bake it in a marinara sauce.
That sounds good.
It is really good.
I
made that up for the first time a couple of years ago, and I was really proud of myself. But I don't know. I just like to try new things. I like going to restaurants. But, if I'm going to go to a restaurant, I want it to be like a really good restaurant. I'm kind of a food snob in that way. So, I love Italian food. My dream, though, would be to, take a group of students and, eat our way across Italy. That would be
that'd be
great.
That'd
be amazing.
Study abroad trip.
There we go.
And I think college relations needs to cover that.
We do.
I think that would be fantastic. So I've tried a lot of stuff, though. I love sweets, though, and that's where I think my high-fat diet that I typically eat has been able to counteract my love for sweets, so that's nice. But
so speaking of high-fat, a couple years ago, Daniel and I were at a conference, and we ate at the Heart Attack Grill in Las Vegas.
Highly recommend that 5-star.
Where if you weigh more than like 350 pounds, I think
You don't even have to pay.
you don't have to pay when you eat, but it just celebrates.
Oh yeah.
But their fries are fried. Their French fries are fried in lard.
did you know that actually, like, I think it's about 40% of lard is actually monounsaturated fat?
So is that good or bad?
That's the good stuff. That's the heart healthy stuff that's in olive oil.
So lard's good. So see, Daniel, we did eat healthy on that trip.
I'm not okay.
did.
So this is my deal. Like, this is where the science is, like I said, about ready to flip flop. Is there's not a lot. There's less and less argument coming out that says saturated fat is the devil, like we've pegged it for the last 40 years.
Yeah, but when you have it's a lot of it's marketing, right? Vegetable oil sounds healthy.
It's actually legumes, not a vegetable.
Yeah, true, very true. If you say lard, it's kind of like, no offense, it's like you're from
pejorative.
It just doesn't really roll off the tongue.
It doesn't roll off the tongue. No.
So we're getting off topic.
Yeah, so.
How about one of your favorite books?
Oh my gosh, this probably sounds really childish. So I like all kinds of books, really, as long as it's not like a textbook, because I'm over reading all those. I don't know. I don't know if I have an exact favorite. I would say probably
One of the favorites. Yeah.
I love like a good heartfelt romance or like sometimes I read Jodi Picoult, which I think I said that right. She's got the kind of mystery / romance type.
Nice.
I like Nicholas Sparks, and my favorite though is probably the series called Love Comes Softly. And it's kind of like a spin-off of like the kind of Little House on the Prairie, set back, we're back in the pioneer days. And then it's got like a little bit of a Christian theme spin-off, and she really attributes or brings in some of those Christian type of components and stuff like that. So I kind of really like that. It kind of sounds childish, but I love it. It's a really good, interesting read, and I don't know. I think that's what really gets me. Although I'm reading another book called Left Behind about the rapture. That's really interesting too. It's kind of freaking me out, but I really like it. So
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Erin, how many times have you been to the top of Sea Hill?
That's a really interesting question. This is going to sound really bad. For as long as I have been at CSC and as a student or worked here, probably 4.
Oh, that's not terrible.
Oh, really?
No.
People are probably like, oh my gosh, you should at least do it once a month.
No.
Yeah, and I think almost half of those were because it was required for a class. Or maybe all of them. I think I was a long time ago. I was part of this club called Wildlife Club, and I think we climbed it once. And then I think the other 3 times were because it was required for a class.
Hey, it all counts. It all counts.
Yeah. Well, let's see here. What word comes to your mind when you think of Chadron State?
Oh, I would just say homey. I don't know. Like it just feels natural. Like I've been here all my life. It was easy to transition into it, and I still love living in this region and working here. So yeah, homey, I guess.
Perfect.
Yeah. Great answer.
So yeah.
Nice.
So yeah.
That takes us to the end of our questions for you, Erin. You did
right.
5 out of 5, 10 out of 10. Good job.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Well, I was
Erin.
glad you guys asked me, because I had never known you guys even did this. So now I listen to it. So it's great.
Yeah.
You
Thanks
guys
for
been
joining
excellent
us.
guests on.
Yeah,
And
you
boy, what are
have.
we up to? Like you're
34.
Yeah, you're number 34 now.
Look at that.
Lucky number 34.
Yeah. Well, thanks again for coming in. We
Yeah,
really
well,
appreciate
thank
having
you. Yeah, definitely. So I hope you guys have a good rest of your semester. So
You too.
yeah.